Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with another MBTI video. Today we're going to be checking out somebody you probably don't know. His name is Nate Black, and he is helping people to do better in their YouTube experience. So if you're a YouTube creator, you may know who I'm talking about, and if you're a YouTube creator and you don't know who I'm talking about, you should definitely check him out. I wanted to get a peek into his mind and get a little bit more of an insight into the way that he thinks, and so I found him in an interview. And so we're going to check that out. But before we do, let's talk about the system because the way that I do MBTI is not something that you have seen before. I use this type grid. This grid helps me to determine the type. I'm looking for five variables, right? An A or a B question. Are you things or ideas? Do you focus on the things that you can put your hands on, or are you focused on the ideas and the execution of things in the future? Of those two things, do you like new ones going getting all the new shiny ones, or are you trying to sort through them and get the best ones, the new or old? Do you do that for yourself or for the tribe? If you do it for yourself, that means that you use the information first, or you use the thing first, and then you pass it on, or do you do it for the tribe and give them the thing, and then you use it for yourself after they're done? And then finally, we're looking at rigid and flexible. That goes with how you communicate the information and how you receive it. Are you rigid and not bending in the way that you are accepting the information, or are you trying to flex around other people's concepts and the information? Are you trying to control the situation, or do you kind of go with the flow? And then finally, it gets to direct and informative. Do you give all of the information and then stop? Or do you give all of the information two or three times? Do you chase rabbit holes and go off on irrelevant things? All of these things come together to let us get just a tiny peek inside the mind. It tells you what you think about first, right? What you focus on first, and how you can improve yourself by identifying the things that you might miss. In order to get some examples of that, we're going to go and look at Nate, and we're going to see if we can identify things that would make us uh, see ourselves so that we can pull for ourselves something that we can identify with that maybe we are this type. This is not an official diagnosis. I am not a doctor. I'm not even trying to do anything of that nature. This is helping you to understand how the mind works just a little bit better. So, with all of that being said, let's dig in to Nate Black.
Do you think that YouTube is the most powerful tool to build an online audience that actually trust you? I mean, some people are really big on, I don't know, like TikTok and Instagram, right? And then we have YouTube, and we have podcasts. We also have newsletters. We are pretty bullish on YouTube just for the reason that you just mentioned, right? You can see people. It's visual. It's long form. It can go deep. It
Okay, so we're getting an example of informative in the question, right?
has an algorithm, so it's great for discoverability. Is YouTube your favorite, or is there anything? Is there any other platform that you want to mention?
It's currently my favorite in terms of online social platforms. Yeah.
So you saw that opportunity
That was rather direct, right? He didn't take nearly as long to answer the question as he did to ask it.
with YouTube. I guess you saw other people making it big on YouTube, and then you wanted to become the expert, right? And nowadays, if people want to become an expert, they go to YouTube and they search for your videos. So how do you learn about YouTube?
That's a good question. It was an interesting journey because at the beginning I set out to teach YouTube, and I was painfully aware that I was not an expert in the traditional sense of expertise. So I thought it was actually a barrier. I had a hard time with that for a while because I was saying, here I'm teaching how to explode a YouTube channel, and my own channel hasn't exploded. Like the channel I was working with hadn't exploded yet. And it wasn't until I realized, I can't remember who I was listening to. I apologize to them. I'm going to steal their concept.
Okay, so that is not holding on to the SI, right? That is not an organization thing if you're not remembering who you got it from. So far, we've seen a lot of self as opposed to tribe, right? This is I statements, not a lot of we statements so far.
Here, I can't remember their name.
And it appears to be more ideas than things so far. We're not getting specific examples of things that have happened as much as working around a spectrum of ideas.
But they said, I was watching them, and they said, there's different types of experts. There's the traditional, like when we think of experts, we think it's a experienced expert, like someone that's done it. Someone, a contractor's been doing this for 30 years. A lawyer's been in business for 20 years. That's traditionally what we think of as an expert.
Yeah.
And then there's results experts. They're the ones that, hey, I made $1 million in a month. Here's how you can too. So they actually got some results. But then I realized there was another type of expert, and that was a research expert, a person that has gone further than anyone else. Even if they're still learning themselves, they can go further than everyone else, and that inherently gives you some level of expertise. So that's what I said about doing with this.
Okay, so the three types of experts can be looked at kind of like things, but it's mostly about the ideas, and his response to it, right, is about the ideas. There are other ways. Let's find them. That is, gather ideas, right? And he also said
themselves, they can go further than he
Right.
was a research expert, a
Right.
person that has gone.
This is about gathering the ideas, unless we see more SI, right? SI is organization. He seems already to be leaning more towards ideas, and that leans me away from the S's, right? We're looking at an N. And so if he is gathering ideas, then the SI will be there, but it's going to be less pronounced, right? He will have the organization, it just won't be well presented.
Further than anyone else, even if they're still learning themselves, they can go further than everyone else, and that inherently gives you some level of expertise. So that's what I said about doing with this. I would watch a whole bunch of YouTube intros, or I would analyze a whole bunch of thumbnails or stuff like that to be able to say, well, look, at the time I'm not an expert, but I see these things. I'm seeing these patterns. There's these recurring things happening. Therefore, these seem to be successful, and I cross.
That is sorting things, right? What he just said is sorting things, used in support of the ideas.
Look, at the time I'm not an expert, but I see these things.
I see these things, right?
I'm seeing these patterns. There's these recurring things happening. Therefore, these seem to be successful, and I cross look at it compared with the success of the videos
Organize it.
and all of those things.
I see all of these ideas and organize it. Like, you don't normally get it expressed quite that clearly.
Would you say that researching is your biggest?
But that's what he's doing, right? He's taking the ideas and distilling them down into the best thing. That is NESI.
Biggest strength? One of your biggest strengths?
Actually, that's a good
Let's back
question.
that up. I
Look
missed
at
the
it
question.
compared with the success of the videos and all of those things.
Would you say that researching is your biggest strength? One of your biggest strengths?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't know that I would say that. I feel pretty weak in my research game. I think
The organization's not quite there.
I'm maybe a bit more stubborn than most people when it comes to researching, and I'll say, my wife knows this, I'll often say, "Hun, I have an idea for a video," and I'll say, "I want to do this and this and this." She'll say, "How much time is that going to take?" And so I'm often quite ambitious with that. But I actually think, Jan, to answer your question, I think it's actually the strength I have is taking this exposure to a lot of research or experience and things and making it intuitive. So I think intuition is actually my strength.
I think it's
Extroverted intuition, as a matter of fact. But this, again, we're getting a lot of ideas, not a lot of solids, right? And so this is, again, leaning me more towards the ideas than the things. We're looking at an N. We're looking at a lot of different ones. He's not really pushing into boxes. Although he is distilling the things down, he's not really distilling the ideas down. He's keeping the options open for the ideas. That's giving me that's giving me new rather than old, right? So we're looking at NE versus NI. So far, we have not heard a lot of team. We have not heard a lot of us, we. We've heard a lot of I. Now, he is the focus, right? This is his thing. But he's not kicking back to the tribe. He brought in his wife one time, and then it was just one quick reference to the tribe and back. That lends me towards self. Again, self does not mean selfish. It just means that you use things for yourself first. You do have a tendency to come off as selfish, but it does not mean that it is your over-defining characteristic. We're looking at rigid and flexible. There hasn't been a whole lot of examples for that. He is not interrupting and trying to take care of control of a situation in that way. So it leans us towards direct and maybe towards flexible. We'll look for some more on that, right? We're looking more now for the T or the F than anything else.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, if you want to become an online expert or just an expert in general, like you don't have to be that hero, right? Like the person who's done it, like world champion chess player starting a podcast or a YouTube channel on how to play chess, right? It's not the only way to do it. You can also just be the reporter. I guess that's what you did, right? You weren't really an expert. You didn't say, I think you're still not saying, oh, well, I think nowadays you have enough credibility, you can call yourself an expert. But at the beginning you could just say, hey, as Nate, I've done all this research and here's what I found, right? And then
I looked at all these ideas, and here's the best thing.
just learn actually.
Like it's pretty clear, right? That the T and the F is really the only.
So just like when I started this podcast, like I didn't really know much about, I mean, of course there was some foundation, but you kind of learn as you go. And yeah, I'm not really the one sharing all the golden advice. The guests like yourself do that, right? I'm just a reporter. Is that your approach at YouTube?
This guy's quite informative, though.
Yes, and I'm so
Like, I don't know his name. It wasn't like he has his channel, but it doesn't have his name, so
glad you're
I missed it.
also
It
bringing that
probably
up
said it.
from your own experience, Jan.
Back it. All right.
Just a reporter. Is that your approach at
So
YouTube?
I apologize. He will be
Yes,
linked.
and I'm so glad you're also bringing that up from your own experience, Jan, because I think the takeaway I would want for people watching or listening to this is it's more accessible than you might think to get into something, because let's say you're very interested in aviation but you've never flown a plane. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make a channel or something, build an audience on aviation, or at least get started on it, because there are other avenues. There's other ways to do it, and hopefully
There's all kinds of ideas out there. Keep that option open.
down the road, like you were talking about, Jan, you
This is giving more of a flex vibe, right? As opposed to I'm giving you this particular path. This is keeping open the paths. Part of that is the ideas. He wants to remain open, right? But he's getting the best thing out of it and not necessarily hammering you with it. He's trying to convince you of it. That's an entirely a feel type thing, right? So I'm leaning away from the T and more towards the F, but we're not really fully sure of that, right? We haven't seen a lot of examples either way, which normally leans towards an F, but doesn't have to.
now are much more capable and expert on this whole interview thing, and you ask awesome questions. You're pulling stuff out of me that I didn't even know was in there.
I think it's funny. Like my son, he goes to the local football club here in the town where we live. And like a few weeks ago, I was talking to one of the parents, and he asked me what I did for a living. And I said that we work with educational YouTube channels, and we help them build courses and funnels and everything. He didn't really understand what it was, and then he was like, "All right." I gave him a few examples, and then he started asking me like, "All right, so these guys are teaching things online and are selling courses. Do they have a degree then? Do they have some kind of
That's somebody SE or TE heavy. Probably TE heavy. SITE heavy.
certification?" And I was thinking like, whoa. I mean, it was a bit, I guess he was 10 years older
What's a degree?
than me, but nowadays, like, well, I'm living in a completely different world, right? If I want to learn something about YouTube, I talk to you. I've never asked you if you have any degree. I guess the whole concept of social proof and trust has changed, right? Like back in the old days, it all people.
I know anybody with any sense is going to question a degree these days.
I mean, employers, clients, they would care
Say
about your degrees. And I think nowadays it's much more about social proof and track records, right? Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it. It's funny, I hadn't thought of
Correct.
that. It hadn't even crossed my mind for a while to even think in that way, but you're absolutely right. It's an era right now where different types of expertise, not in every area, a niche or topic, but in many different types of expertise are outpacing the so-called degree or educational expertise.
Yeah. I noticed that with some of the clients that we have worked with, they have big audiences, lots of social proof, and then when it comes to course creation, they're like, yeah, but actually, I do not really have a background in this, or I do not really have any diplomas. And then, I asked them the questions, that, man, but look at what you've done, like the work you've done over the past few years. You've interviewed all these people. You might not be the hero, right? Like the hero's journey, that hero. But you can also just be the reporter. Again, this is just another example. So I guess just for those people out there who do have an online audience and who want to sell something, who don't feel competent enough, think twice. Think about all those valuable experience that you have. And if you already have a following and people are engaged with your content, that means that there's something there.
Hey, crew.
Right? So why not create a higher tier and a more exclusive version of that content, put it behind a paywall. Anyway,
We're getting some ideas from him too, right? But he's much more informative about them.
Nate, let's talk about YouTube, because that's what people want to. That's what everybody wants to learn. Everybody wants.
All right, one more quick trying to get the T and the F, and then we're going to go ahead and do the
wants to
typology.
get 1 million subscribers on that channel.
Because I really do feel like
first
that's
of
the
all,
last question. Everything
regular
else is pretty
listeners
good.
to this podcast do know a thing or two about YouTube. Is there something that has changed over the last year, for example? Last year, shorts were a big thing. This year, I mean, what's a big thing this year? I'm not even sure. Like, is there anything that has changed?
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's been making a variety of like updates to the platform and et cetera, which is good. That an interesting trend I'm seeing right now is it felt like the Mr. Beast-esque style of content was this unstoppable thing that was just going to take over the entirety of the platform, and it's by no means. I don't think it's slowing down or dying at this point, but an interesting thing is happening where I feel like. I can't remember the creator referred to it as the Mr. Beastification of YouTube. Have you heard of that, Jan?
I've heard that word.
And
Yeah,
again,
so
not being able to
this
pull the
concept
source.
that all the content is starting to look similar.
Yeah,
It's all
similar
becoming
fonts,
homogenized, right?
similar pacing.
Yeah, and it's because it's being way engineered. But what I'm seeing right now is an interesting trend towards the opposite. So those large channels are going to continue to be very successful, and I think that's great. But I've seen a number of videos recently. In fact, just this morning, I wish I could remember his name here, but I watched a video of someone who was pointing out that he thought the direction
And again, when not being able to pull the source, right? That is an SI low stack.
of
Like, you're
YouTube
definitely
was
not SI high.
potentially, if not going away from this Mr. Beastification style, but there was an upsurgence of more raw, authentic, OG or original YouTube content, where all the filters are gone. It's not about the fast cuts and the fancy edits. It's about real people talking with real people. Again,
So that's given me more flex too, right? That it's not hammering, this seems to be the way the trend goes, you should go it, but trying to convince you that this might be the way to go forward. Now, that happens to be the way that I chose from the very beginning, and trends will catch up with me eventually. It's the authentic feel that I go for because we're doing authenticity. Anyway, let's go ahead and do the typology. Get it out there, see what we're working with. He seems to be ideas, right? So we are going to be looking at the right-hand side, the two columns on the right-hand side. He seems to be new, so that's going to put us in the third column. He seems to be self, that's going to give us the top two rows. And he seems to be flexible, so that is going to be the second row down. That's going to give us an INFP. And give me 1 second, and we will pull that up and talk about the last variable, because the last variable comes into play in the third part of the stack. Right? If you are direct or informative, it depends on whether you are giving the information back freely or if you are giving it back reservedly, whether it is externally focused or internally focused. Self is internally focused, so it is going to be SI in the third slot. That's going to make him a straight up INFP. It's going to be the left-hand column. And let's read through and see what we got. He's going to be focused on morals, right? But that is his morals, not necessarily the tribe's ethics. He is going to walk where he feels this is the correct path easily, with no hesitation whatsoever. He is going to be primarily concerned with his feelings in whatever situation you're in. And if your feelings and his feelings collide, yours will get the lower priority. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it can be. He's going to feel responsible for making sure that we keep all the options open, right? We have seen a lot of examples of that. He wants to make sure that you know that there is more than one path to this success. All of these options are available. He's going to have a hard time seeing forward in the things that he gets defensive over is going to be the SI. He's going to have he's going to get defensive over his SI, and SI is organization. It is remembering the sources. It is making sure that everything is in its place. It's not going to be the easiest thing for him, and he's not going to recognize that it's not the easiest thing for him, so he will get defensive over the organization of things. Your organization is probably not the best one. It's probably better than mine. The TE is going to be the part that you miscommunicate and that you don't understand correctly, and that is going to be other people's thoughts. You're going to have a hard time understanding someone else's rationale. You'll get it faster than somebody that has it in the bottom half of the stack, but just barely. You'll probably misunderstand that. You'll probably miscommunicate that. It's not malicious. It's just the way that your stack works. You don't quite understand exactly what they mean when they're saying the things that they say. The heart gets you to where you want to go, but you don't get a lot of information right there. Where you do, without intentionality, tends to come from the bottom and be negative or heavily filtered from the top. And so what you're really going to want to do as an INFP is to consider the morals or the ethics, right? What the tribe has decided is correct. And you need to align your morals with that. You're not going to have the tendency to do that. You're going to have the tendency to align with what you feel is the correct thing. You need to check back and see what the tribe thinks is the correct thing. It's just part of you developing as you. The solar plexus is what's going to feed that, right? What's going to make that work correctly, and it's going to give you what you want to do. Because what you want to do is have the correct ethics. You want to know other people's feelings and what the feelings are going to be about this. And in order to do that, you need to start narrowing down some of the possibilities. NI is narrowed down possibilities. And you are looking at it way down from the positive side and a little bit from the negative side. So you need to start thinking about the possibilities and closing some of them off. Not all of them. You're really good at keeping the right ones open and making sure everybody knows about it. But there are some that you need to lock out. The sacral is the trickster energy. This is the part that's going to trip you up. You intentionally choose this. For the INFP, that is going to be SE. SE is current things and exploration. It is getting the new thing. It is understanding the new thing, and it is completing projects. You're probably going to have a tendency to intentionally not complete the project. You're not going to finish what you're doing. You're going to leave it halfway done. You'll say, this is good enough. It's close enough for government work. Something along those lines. That is an intentional choice. You know that it is not quite good enough. You know that it is not complete. Finish the damn thing. Have the discipline. Get on it. And finally, the base. What's really going to trip you up without you even knowing about it, right? You will get stuck here. Man, you can get stuck on the bottom really easy. And for the INFP, that is going to be logic, right? Fact checking, yes, no questions. You're going to do them wrong. Like you're going to be looking at it completely wrong. That is because, most likely, your FI, what you feel about the situation, is interfering with the TI, which is what you should be thinking about the situation. The information coming from the bottom almost always is wrong. And so you have to work intentionally towards fixing that. If you identify with these things and these examples and you would like to learn more about this, I have a whole playlist linked up at the top. It's called Infinite Integrations, and it breaks this down. If it's a little bit too woo-woo for you, I have another one that's called the MBTI parts. It breaks it down in a slightly different way. All of this is geared towards helping you to identify traits within yourself that can help you to improve yourself. There is a whole 8-week process that goes into implementing these things. You use all of them all of the time to varying degrees of effectiveness. What I have designed and the framework that I give people is the ability to build up how you want things to work in your life and to see the things that you overlook, like the logic here, or whatever it may happen to be, the SE for the alternate. These things can help you to improve your life and to call the things into your life that you want to be in your life, to change your life in the way that you want to change your life. I can't change your life. I have no right to even try. You have to make the decision to do that yourself. I hope that you do. We're going to look just real quick for a little bit of confirmation for the INFP. We have got quite a bit of it. We'll just give it a few more minutes just to make sure, and then we will wrap it up. So let's go.
Something like this, like what we do now.
Oh yeah, absolutely like this. Now the interesting thing is, I don't think that it's going to turn full scale. We're just all going to have conversations because there's still going to be.
That is, I'm not wanting to narrow down this option, right? That's what it is. It's not wanting to pick that one path that is great. It is wanting to keep those options open. He sees the shift in the market. He believes that it is going to move in that direction with good research reasons, but he still wants to keep that option open.
It's the video. You got to thumbnails and titles. You got to have interesting concepts or interesting things to talk about. But I'm seeing more and more this trend towards authentic, real content, and frankly, I'm excited for it because I think in many ways it's a lot of people are craving it. So I feel like a lot of people go to YouTube for that connection that I was talking about, that paper thin connection between you and that creator, that relationship, because a lot of times maybe we're not getting it in our regular life. And so
and see, that's more tribe than we have gotten at all so far.
Even just a shred of feeling like this is a real person, is very valuable to a lot of people.
I think it's very interesting that you're bringing this up. I don't know if you've been following the discussion that we had recently in the WhatsApp group that you're also in. The discussion was basically about one of our inner circle members has a YouTube channel. It's still a small channel, but his videos were very basic, basically presentation style, like no editing. I think no editing at all, but the content was actually really good. And then he was like, okay, I want to take YouTube seriously, so we hired a video guy that came to his house with a bunch of videos, like really good video editing, visuals, fast background music, really good editing. I was impressed. And then he started uploading that content, and then his fans were like, no, give me the old videos.
This ain't
too
it.
fast.
Yeah.
I can't concentrate. Too many distractions. And then the discussion that we had in the group was like, okay, we know that your current audience, they subscribe to you for the content you created in the first place, like the boring, unedited content. But if you want to, this is what I said, and you can, and maybe I'm wrong.
Long
but I
form,
said,
baby.
well, that
I try to
works
do
for
no
your
cuts.
current audience, but if you want to make it big,
I don't
you
always do it, but I
need to
try.
do something more, like you need to have the flashy editing. And then somebody else in the group was like, no, this is bullshit. Here, look at all these examples. And then he shared like video channels of just a guy standing in front of the camera talking for half an hour.
And see, for him, we're getting a lot of examples in support of the many ideas, whereas the opposite for Nate, where we're getting the many ideas being supported by the examples.
Editing, it's all getting ridiculous views
I would wager that he is more organized, right?
than his videos. Very interesting discussion, by the way. Where are you in this? By the way, one last thing. The reason I'm asking you this question is because, well, we're talking about it now, but also I saw that you have a video, like a video that you did a year ago or something. It was a long video. I think it was also presentation style. It was about like if I were about to start YouTube from scratch now, how would I do it? And you basically gave away the entire template. Maybe you remember the video. And that video got way more views than all the other videos all the other faster paced videos that published around the same time. I know this was a very long introduction to the question, but where are
Informative,
you?
baby.
Like, is it really just about can we just create long form content and hope that it goes viral, or where are you in the spectrum? Like, how flashy should we try to?
I'm on slow grind. So.
That is, man, we could talk for hours on that question, that single question. So, man, let me try to unpack this here. Connection, or having that relationship with an audience, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if you approach it strategically and you're monetized well, 9 out of 10 people could make a good living on YouTube with that, with a
what?
very raw, authentic conversational style. I genuinely think that is true. Now, give me individual niches and et cetera, and there's probably caveats and exceptions to that, but I genuinely think that. Now, with that said, I have seen an interesting thing happen here, where authenticity, or that raw, unedited style, it seems to have a cap in many cases, and it depends on the audience, but there seems to be a cap of amount of people that are those fans that just kind of want to watch all of those videos. Now, the cap is affected by the topic matter of the videos a lot. I don't know how to pronounce the channel, but there's the channel Penguins Zero. I apologize if he watches this, and I totally slaughtered his name, but he gets like 3 million views, and it's just a guy sitting at his computer with basically a webcam recording, right? 3 million views no matter what he uploads. But he talks about really wide topics that they're controversial, they're kind of juicy, they're really interesting, there's that drama, and so he addresses it, and he has this reputation for being a no BS type of person. So there's that.
So we got several examples of this one type of thing, right? So that's some organization. Like, it's not his organization, and it's some support of the ideas, but that's organization.
And there's a person that maybe they have a more niche topic, and they're just being
and here's
that
the
raw,
other idea
type of self, and they might have a smaller cap of amount of people or views that are interested in that. One of the ways I have seen to break through that cap has been more editing, more pacing, and more focus on delivering in a very visually and editing pleasing way. Seems to work to break
So
through.
which is
because that was some flex, right? This seems to work. This type of thing, right? That's a very flex type. He has been very much ideas oriented. We haven't really talked about the details as much as the general ideas and scope. That's given me ideas. He's dealing with the new ones. He's not narrowing it down to the one specific one. That's given me new. He's doing it primarily for himself. Most of his discussion has been about himself. Yes, he is being interviewed, but there are different ways some of these questions could have been taken. So he has given me self. He seems to be flexible, right? He is pretty good about flexing around the situation. He has had several examples so far of that, and he seems to be fairly direct. Like that answer was pretty long, but it wasn't over informative. It was one answer to the question with an example inside of it, as opposed to running off and taking 3 minutes to ask the question, right? And that's no hate, no shade. I'm never casting hate or shade at anybody. I feel fairly confident with this one, right? This is never like some official medical diagnosis or anything of that nature. This is identifying examples of things that we see in Nate that we can identify with. And it's like, oh, well, maybe I'm ideas too. Oh, well, maybe I'm self too. And those type of things can help you to determine your type. That's why we have the whole type grid. That's the whole reason that this thing is so easy. So that you can just go, oh, I identify with this, and look, oh, there it is. What do I do about that? Hey, Pitt's got a video on that. Let's go see what he's got to say. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and maybe just a little bit of comedic relief to a not too difficult topic, right? I wanted to, one of the things that we do on this channel is help amplify things that people may not know about. You may not know about Nate Black, and you may not know about the guy interviewing him, but now you do, and the links are provided down below, and you are always encouraged to go back and watch the entirety of the podcast. Go back and watch the whole interview, get the context of everything all the time, but show support to these people. We are amplifying voices while amplifying ideas. That's a good one, right? To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit's Take. Peace.